A California killing spree that's captivated the world for decades. Now a group of sleuths claims to have solved the case of the infamous Zodiac Killer.
The Zodiac case was less gruesome initially because there was no sexual component to it. There was nothing sadistic. There's no body parts taken. There are no trophies.
When it comes to true crime's greatest mysteries, few names send chills down the spine quite like the Zodiac Killer. This guy wasn't just a murderer. He was a full-blown enigma, taunting the police, playing mind games with the public, and leaving behind a trail of fear that still lingers decades later. Unlike most killers who either get caught or fade into the background, Zodiac made sure he'd never be forgotten. And guess what? It worked. Between the 1960s and 1970s, the Zodiac Killer haunted Northern California, naming himself as the killer of multiple people. Until today, he has been proven to have killed at least 5 people, but according to him, he has ended the lives of 37 people. His victims, just normal people, couples, a cab driver, college students, no obvious pattern, no clear motive, only pure random horror. This random horror is exactly what made him one of the most terrifying serial killers. But the murders weren't even the big deal in this case. It was how he turned it into a twisted mind game. The way he sent out letters, ciphers, and threats in coded language made everything even more creepy. So, let's dive into the mysterious case of the Zodiac Killer and uncover all the details that might have been hidden in plain sight. Murders, abductions, cryptic letters, and threats. His series of brutal murders kicked off on December 20th, 1968, killing 17-year-old David Freyday and 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen, who were a young couple out on a date. At around 8:30 p.m., David picked up Betty from her house and promised her parents that they would be home by 11 p.m. They stopped at Lake Herman Road near Vallejo, California, when out of nowhere a gunman came and shot them dead. It was cold-blooded violence. Benicia police and other law enforcement officers responded to the incident. Betty was found dead at the spot, but David was still alive, taking his last breath. There were bullet holes in the car, which might have been warning shots to get the couple out of the car. The shell casings were found to be Winchester Western Super X copper-coated. Other evidence showed that the killer had used a .22 caliber, possibly a J.C. Higgins Model 80 semi-automatic pistol. It marked the beginning of the most notorious killing spree by the Zodiac Killer.
I believe that the Zodiac's MO was primarily initially to gain notoriety, to gain attention.
Just after 6 months, he targeted another pair, who weren't a couple, but friends. This time, it was 22-year-old Darlene Farron, who was a wife, mother, and waitress at a Vallejo restaurant, and her 19-year-old friend, Michael Majot. On the night of July 4th, 1969, she picked up Michael in her Corvair and stopped by Blue Rock Springs Park. Another car pulled up next to them, but soon left. However, after a few minutes, the car returned and a masked man got out. He walked up to their car, flashed the light on them, and then fired at the Corvair relentlessly with a 9mm handgun. Farron died at the spot, but Majot somehow survived the attack. At around 12:40 p.m., the Vallejo Police Department received a phone call, which was found to have been initiated from a gas station payphone. The man on the call claimed responsibility for the murders, as well as the ones at Lake Herman Road. According to the police dispatcher, the man talked in a low and monotonous voice, saying, "I want to report a murder. If you will go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway, you will find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." The Zodiac Killer's letters and cryptic messages are the creepiest part of this bizarre, unsolved case. Between 1969 and 1974, he sent out at least 20 letters to different people, including journalists, cops, and random people, with each one being more unsettling than the last. The way he wanted to speak to the public wasn't all about taking credit for the murders. He wanted to play mind games, taunt the world, and make sure that everyone knew his name even after decades. To be honest, it has worked.
Point blank, and then probably watched the news very carefully to see how the news would play it out. And the more the news played it out, the more he got involved.
After this murder, Zodiac began his communication with the newspapers, the public, and law enforcement. The 3 newspapers, the San Francisco Examiner, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the Vallejo Times-Herald, got almost the same handwritten letters from the Zodiac. But something was missing: the return address. In Vallejo Times' letter, he had owned up to the 2 shootings and offered the details about the victims, crime scene, and weapons.
And no one could find him. He liked the game. And it's about winning the game, and he was winning.
San Francisco's letter had about a third of it covered in a cipher. In this letter, he had asked the newspaper to publish these notes by Friday, August 1st, 1969. In the last letter, which was sent to the San Francisco Examiner, he threatened to kill more people if the newspapers didn't make his letters public. He also wrote, "I like killing people because it's so much fun." The Examiner got another letter from Zodiac on August 4th, 1969, which was an answer to the police asking to prove he was the actual killer. This was the very first time he had used his name, the Zodiac.
The Zodiac was not a seasoned killer. I don't think he knew exactly where to stab somebody to get the best results.
The murder spree took a sharp turn in September of the same year. On September 27th, 1969, at Lake Berryessa near Napa, college students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were hanging out around the side of the lake. But what started as a peaceful day would soon spiral into a nightmare. A man with an executioner's hood, glasses, and a gun walked up to them, and their tragedy began. He told them that he had escaped from jail and demanded money and a car as he had to move out to Mexico. He tied their wrists and attacked them with a knife. By then, the killer was confident enough to leave his traces behind. Before leaving, he scrawled a chilling message on Brian's car using a pen, marking it with his creepy crosshair symbol, his way of making sure everyone knew exactly who was in control. He also wrote the dates and location of his last attacks, which went like September 27, 69, and 6:30.
So the Zodiac ramped up his behavior because he knew it would get him more attention.
He later phoned the police and reported the murders by explaining the details of Brian's car, with the disturbing words, "I am the one who did it." Police had traced the call to a payphone, which was located near the car wash in Napa. 2 days later, Cecilia passed away due to her deep wounds, but Brian lived to tell the tale. The Zodiac Killer's next attack was very different from his last one. This time, he targeted a 28-year-old cab driver, Paul Stine, who was a student and a husband. On the night of October 11th, 1969, Paul took the fare to the destination in the upscale Presidio Heights neighborhood. When they reached the intersection of Washington and Cherry Streets, the passenger attacked and killed Paul. But the most chilling part of this murder was that the killer had torn off a piece of Paul's shirt. Before the police arrived at the scene, Zodiac made it out of there safely. However, later, the police broadcast mistakenly took a black man as a suspect while completely ignoring a white man passing by with the exact description of the Zodiac Killer. In contrast to his other brutal attacks on couples and college students this time, it was just a random cab driver, put to death in a calculated manner, almost like a professional hit. The fingerprints found on the driver's side were found to be those of the killer. Soon after, a sketch was made using the descriptions provided by the witnesses. Around the same time, the San Francisco Chronicle got a letter from the Zodiac Killer on October 13, 1969, which started with the words, "I am the murderer of the taxi driver." The letter's envelope also had a part of a blood-stained Paul Stine's shirt. In the letter, the author taunted the police as they had failed to catch him, but that wasn't all. He even threatened to target children on a school bus. Soon after, on November 8, 1969, Chronicle got another chilling letter from the Zodiac. Interestingly, this letter's envelope also had a piece of Paul's shirt, a humorous greeting card, and most disturbingly, a cipher having at least 340 symbols. Just a day later, on November 9th, the Chronicle got one more letter. It was a 3-page write-up in which Zodiac confirmed that the police had gotten their hands on him, but they eventually let him go. In the end, he also wrote how to make a bomb paired with a diagram of an explosive. The next month, Zodiac decided to speak with a famous attorney, Melvin Belli. On December 20th, 1969, Melvin got an unsettling letter in which the writer hinted that he would kill someone again and wanted Melvin to interfere. He had mentioned that it would probably be his 9th or 10th victim if he lost control. The letter began with Christmas wishes but ended with the words, "Please help me. I cannot remain in control for much longer." While it is officially confirmed that he had taken down 5 people, the actual number of people the Zodiac Killer has murdered is still unknown. Who knows, he might even have killed 37 people, as he had claimed in his letters. The random nature of his targets, locations, and method of killing made it highly challenging for law enforcement to locate him.
So the Zodiac likes to mix up his MOs. By shooting them and then stabbing them, keeps the police off kilter.
Several other attacks and murders ended up being connected to the Zodiac in one way or another. On March 22, 1970, a 22-year-old woman named Kathleen Johns left San Bernardino in her station wagon with her infant daughter. Kathleen was headed to Petaluma, the northern side of the state, to meet her sick mother. She was 7 months pregnant. As she drove on Highway 132 near Modesto, another car pulled beside her station wagon, and the man inside the car signaled her to pull over. Once she stopped her car on the side of the road, the man told her that her tire was loose and he could fix it. However, he intentionally messed it up. When Kathleen tried to drive after he fixed it, the tire came off entirely. The man then offered to drop her at a nearby gas station. When she hopped into his car, she got to know about his evil plans. He made threats to kill her infant daughter. However, she didn't waste any time. Grabbing her daughter, she jumped out of the car. Luckily, a passing car stopped for her, and she quickly made her way to the police station to report what had happened. The creepiest part? She instantly recognized him as the guy from the Zodiac sketch.
So the murder suddenly stopped, and no more Zodiac. So he's either incapacitated, he's in a hospital, or he's in a prison. And there wasn't enough DNA to find him.
Just after a few months, another letter was received by the Chronicle on July 24, 1970, mentioning this incident. In the letter, he protested that people weren't wearing his crossed circle buttons. He also reminded everyone that he was behind the failed abduction of Kathleen Johns on March 22, 1970. 2 days later, he sent out another 5-page letter to the Chronicle. Zodiac told the press about how he had tortured his victims, referring to the Gilbert and Sullivan musical, The Mikado. The letter also hinted that Mount Diablo Code was linked with the geometric angles called radians. In the previous month, on June 26th, he had sent a letter in which he had shared a location through which the police could find the Zodiac bomb. He also claimed that he murdered someone once again. He also sent letters in the month of April. In April 20th's letter, he shared a 13-symbol cipher and a picture of an explosive he said he would use on a school bus. He also mentioned that he didn't bomb the police station, which had killed a police officer back then. In another letter, which was received on April 28th, Zodiac forcefully asked the press to publish the pictures of the bomb and demanded that the people of the San Francisco Bay Area wear their crossed circle buttons. The letter ended with the note, "Well, it would cheer me up considerably if I saw a lot of people wearing my button. Please, no nasty ones like Melvin's."
To profile the Zodiac, at least from my perspective, what I know of the case, he was somebody who had a reasonably intelligent job where he requires some intelligence. I think he believed he was smarter than law enforcement.
Then, Zodiac locked in on his next victim in September 1970. In May 1970, 25-year-old Donna Lass worked at Letterman General Hospital in San Francisco, around the same place where Zodiac had shot down a cab driver. She later moved down to South Lake Tahoe and began working as a nurse at the Sahara Hotel and Casino. On September 6th, Donna went missing just after her last entry into her workplace logbook, which was at 1:50 a.m. Her car was found parked right outside her apartment, but she was nowhere to be found. According to witnesses, an unknown man who claimed to be Donna's employer and landlord said that she had a family emergency, and therefore she left the town. Her family, however, told the authorities that there wasn't any such situation, and the man was never identified. Donna was believed to have been kidnapped and murdered. Suspects and theories. The Zodiac Killer case has got people second-guessing for decades, with endless theories about who he really was. Even after there was a good amount of evidence, the police couldn't name anyone as the Zodiac Killer. The number one suspect in this case was Arthur Lee Allen. This man had a shady public record, with the urge to kill couples for fun. He also owned a Zodiac brand wristwatch with a crossed circle sign. True crime author Robert Gray Smith wrote 2 books about him being the real culprit. However, his fingerprints never matched with the ones found on the crime scenes. Arthur went to prison in 1974, but his charges were different. But Allen wasn't the only suspect. In 2014, an author named Gary L. Stewart wrote a book, The Most Dangerous Animal of All. in which he claimed that his biological father, Earl Van Best Jr., was the real Zodiac. Though Earl did have creepy similarities with the Zodiac sketch, once again, there wasn't much evidence. During the same year, a man came up with another suspect. He said that his late friend Louis Myers confessed that he was the Zodiac before he died in 2002.
Yeah, this group also connects the Zodiac Killer to a 55-year-old murder out of Riverside, California. And we just got off the phone with Riverside police who tell us there isn't a connection.
Even though Myers' past lined up with the Zodiac's, the police couldn't pin him as the culprit because there just wasn't enough solid proof. At the end of the day, the Zodiac Killer remains one of the most mysterious cases in history. The cryptic clues, senseless murders, and lack of answers have made him a legend. Could the real Zodiac still be out there, or has the truth been lost to time? Share your thoughts below.